Hi everyone, good afternoon. Not long to go yet, and what we do on a day 2 of every afternoon is we put the best sessions on, so no pressure, Emma. But yeah, who was in the Biffa one earlier? So yeah, Biffa won the best campaign. Oh yeah, you were, of course you were. Biffa won the best campaign, and of course it was wonderful. Highly commended for exactly the same award came to Moto Hospitality, and they also won Best Intranet, which I'm sure some of the staff bases down here are very pleased with as well. Yeah, this session is around Loop and around their story, so that's their intranets and their intranet launch story. Some clever little tips and tricks around adoption that are cheap as chips as well, I believe.
Yep. Yep.
So this is Emma, and you're head of colleague
head of colleague experience and communications. It's a right fluffy mouthful, but yeah.
A little bit. So yeah, I'll get straight into getting you off. But before that, can you just remember to put the questions in the app?
Although I am going to get you to do a little bit of interaction with me, so put them in the app if you want. But I'll also encourage them as I go along.
Brilliant. That sounds great. All right, over to you, Emma.
I am going to start this by saying, bear with me if I have to go back and forth, because if I stand behind the podium, I completely disappear, which is why when I was on the Weakest Link a few years ago, they gave me so many steps to step onto. So bear with me. And I was just saying that thank you for those of you that are here. Up against Rachel Miller, I wouldn't have come to listen to this. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope I make it worth your while. So I'm Emma James, and I work for a company called Moto Hospitality. Now, here's the brutal question. Anyone in the room know who we are? Oh, a few. Okay. How many people have stopped at a Motorway Services in the last couple of weeks? Awesome. Did you buy a Burger King, a Marks and Spencer's sandwich, a KFC? You've most likely stopped at one of ours. We run the majority of the UK's motorway services. So Winchester, I'm trying to think of any, Wetherby, Toddington, Heston, that's us. And we have 6,000 staff, because those that served you that Burger King burger, they're actually Moto staff. So most people don't realise that. So I wanted to open with that because we're dealing with a very frontline colleague base. We call them colleagues. 95% of them are a 19-year-old or a 65-year-old working in Burger King. Just gives you a little picture of what we're dealing with. So my story slightly is I was originally in marketing. There's probably a few people in the room that are now in internal comms by accident, started in marketing. So I do both internal communications and kind of that employee experience side here at Moto, and I've been there 3.5 years. But before that, I did that for Merlin Entertainments, so the world of theme parks and Madame Tussauds. So I've been used to that front line, dealing with those frontline colleagues. So let's tell you a little bit about us. We're over 52 sites, 6,000 colleagues. We are not the destination, is the best way I can describe it. We are a begrudged purchase on your way to your destination. So we have a purpose, which is brightening people's journeys through life, because they're often on their way to drop their daughter off at university, to a funeral, to a job interview, to a holiday. So we are on the way to it. So our colleagues have quite a unique experience in that way, because often they're dealing with customers that are a begrudged purchase to an extent. And look, we have a lot of fantastic brands as well, which is both our biggest strength and our biggest challenge. You imagine now you work in one of our Burger Kings, you're getting messages from Moto, from Burger King, from KFC, from M&S. It is complex. So what did we do? I took this role on, I actually started doing just one side of it. I took on internal comms back in 2021, and I spent a year saying what we've got right now is crap, if I'm honest, and you'll see why in a moment. We need to do something different. And if you've been in my shoes, you have to spend that time building that business case, explaining to people and your board why they need to invest. We looked around at all the different options. Anybody that's not Staffbase in the room, I apologise, because we did the narrowing down. Staffbase are not the cheapest, but not the most expensive, but value for money. And I'm looking at Julia here, because I always say this. They actually undersold and over-delivered. They actually went the other way to what most people do, which was really refreshing. So we're really happy. We really spent a lot of time digging into the detail of what was going to work. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, it's also hard work that first 6 months. You've got an intranet to build, you're working with steering groups. So we spent a lot of time building that working party, that steering group. If you're going to look to do your own intranet or app, you've got to start there. It made it so much easier later that we had somebody from operations, someone from finance, somebody from product sales. They all helped build Loop, which is our platform. So look, what was our old system? Monica was, like I said, crap is the best way I can describe it. It was like a 1990s website, if you can imagine. One way, clunky, Took about 3 minutes to load. Can you imagine being a Burger King 19-year-old going, I'm not waiting 3 minutes for this to load on my phone? It was awful. Does anybody, I'm going to ask for a bit of interaction, anybody have that really awful intranet right now that you're ashamed to say, yeah, I've got such, you know what, you were the first one. They're called Boost because we're talking about boosting our internet. There's one, thanks for owning up first. So I tried to find, I'll explain in a minute, I tried to find hula hoops and that will make sense shortly, but I didn't get any. So it was very one way. There was no sort of bottom-up communications. It was naff to load. It was just completely disengaging. It just didn't work. So when I came in, I actually started on the back foot because they had such negativity around it. They'd been promised they were going to have this wonderful intranet, this wonderful app, and it was rubbish. So I had to prove a point. If I was going to relaunch, it had to be flipping good from day one. So we went to Staffbase, found a fantastic solution, but I'm going to tell you the other secret to our success / challenge to our daily lives is that we integrated it with Reward Gateway so that it becomes the place our colleagues have to be. They get their discounts, their benefits, their communications, their social, their recognition, all in one place. And we're one of the very few people to have done that. It has generated some challenges. I'm looking at Alex and Julia because it's been an interesting journey. But the user experience is amazing because they feel like they're all in one place. So we broke up with Monica. This was our campaign. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you. Other than my budget to actually run Staffbase, I've got me, 2 people, barely no budget. For the launch, 5 grand. To 6,000 people. That's not even £1 per person. Now I have a budget of about 20 grand a year to work with, but that is mainly used on things like video production. I'm sure you guys are so used to that. So I do things on a budget. So we did this little breaking up with Monica campaign. Oh my goodness, it went brilliantly actually. We created a bit of humour and it went really, really well. So we had to get them away from Monica. We had to let them know there's something better on its way. So look, what I wanted to mention was our launch. There's a lot of information on the screen, but essentially we had fun with it. We ordered in bulk of hula hoops. So the name was actually voted for by our colleagues. We didn't open it up and give them a chance to shout everything. We gave them 4 to choose from. Otherwise, it's dangerous. I'm sure you've all been there. So Loop became the one that everybody went for. So we did hula hoops and we stuck stickers on them hula hoops. They were out there. It just got people talking about it. QR codes for downloads. We did not spend a huge amount of money. We did posters with QR codes. But the biggest thing for us was we put £2.50 in each of their perk pots. Strangely, didn't come out of internal comms budget. That came out of the recognition budget in the HR team. But what it meant is if they signed up within the first 3 weeks, they got £2.50 of points immediately in their little pot that they get within Reward Gateway. So it drove that engagement really quickly. Now, Julia, I'm sure from Staffbase in the middle there, will attest to this. We had all these goals of what we wanted for our sign-up in those first 3 weeks, and we blew them out of the water. It was nuts. And it was all about having fun with it, making it the place that they wanted to be, not just needed to be. We had competitions. We had like the site with the highest sign-up. We had so much fun with it. And they weren't big prizes. They were like a Costa coffee mug. It wasn't huge. We just had some fun with it. We also did like screensaver takeovers. We took over the screensavers on phones and on iPads, on computers. We did some little coasters in the staff areas. Like it didn't have to be rocket science to kind of make it work. So like I said, we wanted to make Loop the place our colleagues wanted to be, but we've actually given them FOMO now. They've got this proper fear of missing out if they're not on there. And I'll tell you, 18 months in, any guesses at how high our sign-up rate is, bearing in mind we're retail and hospitality? Okay, if anyone can get it right, there's chocolate. Unless I've told you, you can't cheat. 86. 86? Any more? 92. 92? Any more? Chocolate over to the lady in the middle. Are you ready? Oh! 95, yes, we are at 95, almost 96% sign-up rate. So, what did you say? Did I get you wrong? Don't admit it. Oh, that's all right. I think down here then, I'm going to have to get you to throw it. I think this lady down here was the closest with 92. Ready? Who knew you were going to come in here and throw chocolate bars around, hey? Okay. So, essentially, yes, right now we're at 95% sign-up, which for our industry is astonishing. And it's all to do with making it that place they want to be. So we also did a little road show. There's me and some of my team. There's me and Jonathan in Dover. This one here, we're in Pease Pottage. This is Tracy from our team up in Wetherby. We basically took our little steering group, because there's only 3 of us on the comms team, so we did it with our steering group. We got each of them to take 3 sites, and we just went round over a 2-week period and just went and visited the sites. And something I noticed Fresca talked about earlier was the benefit of literally just sitting in front of someone and going, literally, this is what you do. That's what we do. Oh, there you are. There you go, Shelley, wasn't it? The benefit of that is huge. Now, we've got 50 odd sites. I can't go around and do that still at this point, but back at the beginning we did that. Now I have champions, a bit like you said, that help us do that on each site. Some get it better than others, but they then become that drop-in, that option to learn a bit more. So really is about engaging with people, having a little bit of fun with it. But what I wanted to mention was just going back to that. We have Loop and Loop My Perks. So Loop is Staffbase, Loop My Perks is Reward Gateway. But to the colleague, they feel like they're all in one place. It really works. The colleagues love it. They get the opportunity to send an e-card at the same time as they get the opportunity to see the latest news. And I'm going to show you a little bit more of how it looks shortly as well. But I wanted to just highlight how important it was for us to unite that experience and the difference it's made. I believe that's part of the secret to our success. So look, what is Loop? Loop is our incredible platform, and I've got some screenshots for you. And do you know what, Shelley, I've learned from you here. My screenshots are mostly desktop. I wish I'd done them as mobile ones, because ours is actually even higher. It's 80% of our audience use it on mobile. Only 20% use desktop. And that actually is getting smaller, that desktop usage. So you get a little bit of it there. Can you see it? It's just so simple, honestly. You press a button on your phone and it's there. And we did get the resistance, like Shelley mentioned, to putting it on their personal phones until they realised how easy it was. And I think also the fact that it's in the App Store, it just felt authentic rather than this rubbish moniker thing that you're being told to put on your phone. So look, it's a bit of what it looks like. This is already out of date. We've moved it on a bit since here. But you've got like a headline news piece. So that's usually a little carousel of about 3 pieces, and that's those core news items. We then have like a few key, if you can see up here, some quick buttons, kind of quick access buttons. And then I don't know how well you can see it, but our actual whole thing is based on 3 feeds. You've got your news on the left there, and that is tailored to you as an individual. Now, I won't show you mine, because just like Shelley, I'm a super user, and you'd probably like pass out because I get everything. But if I am a department manager in Burger King at Wetherby, that news feed is going to be tailored to be Burger King, department managers, and Wetherby. Your middle one is your all-company social feed. So the news feed on the left, only us and a select group of editors can put things on there. That middle all-company social feed, anyone can post anything. I'm going to show you some examples later. We get some great stuff in there. The latte challenge we had with like making faces on the top of the coffees, a bit like your pumpkins, was great. And now on the right is your community. So that's your fun stuff. We've got a baking community. We've got a Disney community. That might be mine. I go to Disney World far too often. We've got a parenting community. So that's kind of your fun stuff to engage with. We also use the communities for things like our D&I groups and our steering groups to create areas where they can have conversations. I wanted you to just have a glimpse there. But if you look along the top, you'll also see that you can then click into your site feed. So every site also has their own social feed. So Team Wetherby, they're really proud up at Wetherby. They have a hashtag Team Wetherby. Their feed is just for Wetherby. So it gives somebody on a site the option to post something on the whole feed or just on their site. As an interesting one, how many of the room are dealing with very frontline consumer, customer-facing colleagues? We've got a lot. It's challenging, right? Because you can't use email. As much as you try, we literally can't. We don't have their emails. So actually, for us, this has become the way of using it, and we're very, very careful about our notifications. It's really easy to create 100 notifications arriving on each person. That notification is almost like that email. We really closely monitor that. One of our teams, our Cornwall pasty team, put out a notification at 10 p.m. on a Friday. They knew about it on Monday when I called them and said, don't do that again. So there's definitely an element as a comms team of almost having to just police it and own that a little bit in terms of really making sure that stuff is being respected. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about knowledge base a bit later on. And here's, just to give you a glimpse of it on the phone, that's what the My Perks bit looks like on the left there, where you can send an e-card, you can access your discounts, you can access all your benefits, and we also have our wellbeing hub within there as well, so I know we mentioned that one earlier. And then on the right there, some of the communities. You've got movies, parenthood. You can even create a community. So again, we're creating it as that one-stop place to be. And I would probably say, I was speaking earlier to the lady from CareTech as to how do you really keep driving the momentum. And one thing for us is constantly pushing people back to Loop. So if, for example, our risk, health and safety team are putting out a comms, we'll say to them, I understand this audience you're sending it to or on email. Fine, I understand, send it on email, but do not attach it. Send them straight back to a connection on Loop. Everything we do drives people back to Loop. Even a poster has a QR code on it. So everything you do, just keep driving them back and having that truly at the heart of your communications. So there you go. There's a site social feed there. So you can see then Donington Park has its own. So if I work at Donington Park, I can access the company one, also the site one. Or I can also specifically go to my brand down the right-hand side. So I can go and have a look at Costa and say, oh, what's the latest piece about the recycling cups that we're working on? And I don't know if anybody else has this challenge. Do you find that you do a lot of in-the-moment communications as internal comms people that work in that moment, but you've got new starters, you've got people that won't see it a year later? Does anybody else have that same challenge? Yeah? So for us, that was a big thing. So this app had to be both an app and an intranet. So if we post something out there on the social feed in the moment, it is also replicated on the relevant departmental feed. So if we're putting a piece out there about pay and tax, we'll put it on the news feed, but it'll also be replicated on the people page. So people know how to go back and get the information relevantly and use the search facility to find that information when they need it, not just in the moment we're delivering it. Does that make sense? It's become something that's really helped us to look at it in both ways. And on the right there, you can see our Wellbeing Hub. That's actually through Reward Gateway, although like I said, you wouldn't really know you're slipping between the two of them. So look, let's talk a little bit about results and measurement, and then I'm going to take a break for a first few questions before I jump into where we are now 18 months later. So after a month of being launched, we had exceeded all our benchmarks and all our expectations, so we were so happy with that. Woohoo! We had 83% of colleagues registered by month 2. We were hoping to get over 50. So we were absolutely over the moon with that. 78% monthly activity rate, again, way above benchmark. And we had 4,500 of 4,800 were active. So that's what we wanted to see. They're on there, they're using it. So this is kind of taking me pretty much, let me just check, I think I've got one more, up to date for where we were probably a few months ago. So we'd had a huge amount of visits. Within the first month, we had 1,400 comments, 920 posts. So we knew straight away people loved it and were engaging with it. I also wanted to touch a little bit on some of the posts we see. So you can see the Burger King crowns all piled up down there. The sites have great fun with this, posting some really quirky stuff through to long service awards. So we do have some great content, and we've definitely identified some pockets and groups of people that really get it. So what we've now done is launched the Loop Champions. We piloted it with 4 sites to begin with, and we've now, literally about 2 months ago, launched Loop Champions on every site, offering them training and education to really harness that group of people that really get it. So look, before I go on to where are we now and what's working, because that was sort of where we were a few months ago. I would say 18 months into launching, we're ready for phase 2, which is why I asked that question earlier, Shelley, of like, now you're at that point, what are your challenges? So if I pause, I thought it would just be a good chance if there's been any questions that are more around the launch and where we are now, I could take that. I don't know if Patrick's got anything at this point. Okay. Anybody got any questions of how we got this far? Yes.
Around frontline colleagues. In my organisation, we have just over 5,000 staff,
Yep.
and 1,000 of those colleagues at the very least are fully frontline, out and about in the borough. When we had our old intranet, it was very clunky, really poor, really bad, and they had no access to it whatsoever. Now with the new one, they have access to it on personal devices as well as their corporate devices. But what we find is that most people, there is really high engagement with the intranet, which I'm very shocked about personally, but about 99% are on desktop. So
interesting.
we don't know if those colleagues who are on the front line wait to go to the office and then log in on a
So
computer.
do they have an office? They have an office. So ours wouldn't, you see. That's the difference. They don't
Yeah.
have an office. But so they've got the office space as well?
They do, yeah. But then sometimes someone can be visiting the office once in 2 weeks, or
Okay.
they're going to the base once a day. So I guess my question is, and I know like a lot of your staff, if not all of them, are fully out and about,
Yeah.
but did you do anything to try and drive engagement with frontline colleagues to see if we can try and adopt that? Because at the moment, we don't know why the percentage of desktop is so high.
That's really high. That surprises me. I think the roadshow was definitely the first bit, because when you sit in front of somebody, I actually sat with one of our senior leaders who works on a site, and I noticed that Winchester services, they're actually my local one, I live in Dorset, so and I said, why is your engagement so low at Winchester? Why are people not getting involved? And he, as a site operations manager, didn't get it. He's over 60, he'd got really in his own head about it. And I sat with him for 10 minutes and I showed him it on the iPad, and he went, this is really easy. I was like, yeah, and it took no time at all. His site now has really got behind it, but I would just say it's that little bit of time with them. But the challenge I know is if it's just you can't do that with everybody. So for us, we've really focused on the managers. So for example, every one of our units, every Burger King, every M&S has got a department manager just for that. So they're a frontline manager, I would say, rather than a desk manager. So the first thing we've done is really tried to engage them as our intermediary. But the other thing we did is we invested in an iPad for each unit. And then Loop is like a little icon on there, so it's right there. And this is going to sound really hard to explain, but we've put kiosk mode on it. So what that means is if one of the users from the Burger King at Weatherby Services wants to go and use it, but they don't want to use their personal login because they could forget to log out, the next person going into it could then use their points. It made them very nervous. So what they have is a kiosk mode where they can just log in to see all the news and information relevant to their unit. So they can log in as Burger King Weatherby. There's like an extra login just as that. So anybody in that whole team can use that login, and that's definitely helped as well. So it cost us, 60 iPads. Luckily that came out of tech budget, not mine. If you noticed, I'm good at that. So yeah, that's the other thing we did, is just tried to think of a way, and just listening to them, if I'm honest. When they told me we're nervous to log in on the iPads because of this, we just adapted how we did it, and Staffbase helped us create kiosk mode.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does, yeah.
Thanks.
Can I ask another question?
Go for it.
quickly? And I think this comes out of having such a crap intranet for years. But in our organisation, whenever you need a platform for something, there's always like another site.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
your HR processes is on a completely different
Yeah.
platform. Health and safety is on something else. And literally there's a platform for everything.
Yeah.
I really like how with your intranet, like the reward gateway is embedded into the platform.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, is that something you had to have a conversation about, of how do you pull them both together? And if so, how?
Julia will laugh because we've had a lot of conversations about it, and it was challenging. So that's the only one we have, is what I would call single sign-on.
Yeah.
So they feel like they're in the same place. It has been complicated and it has generated some tech challenges, but it's not actually been that bad, really. Has it? Julia's like, ah! So you just smile. So for the colleague, you would think, wonderful, it works. From our side, it was complicated. What I would say now is within the staff-based system, you can have something called Launchpad. So we've got this little thing called Launchpad up in the top right. Forget Reward Gateway and put it anything else. So we use Dayforce, for example, for HR stuff, and this will have to use that to get their pay slips and stuff. It's not single sign-in, but the Launchpad means they can go and access it really quickly, which means they're still using Loop as the heart of it. If they don't download anything else, they can still go through Loop to get to everything. And we've targeted that Launchpad to the user group. So if you work in a Burger King, on that Launchpad will be your Burger King ordering app for ordering the burgers that you need. If you work at Costa, you won't see the Burger King. Does that make sense? So if they go to their Launchpad, they can access everything. 18 months in, we now want to understand which ones of those they're clicking the most so that we can then invest in the next single sign-on. Does that make sense? Sort of almost grow it bit by bit?
Any other questions? Uh-huh.
Front.
Hello.
Hello.
Great results.
Thank you.
For the people that haven't engaged, have you looked at that data? Is that a specific demographic?
Do you know what? That's a
Specific
flipping good
brand,
question. I love
location?
that. It's a mixed bag, if I'm honest. It's a really good question. It's a really mixed bag and it's not predictable. Actually, I thought I'd see a age demographic or a particular demographic. It's usually people that are just, what's the word I'm looking for? I think it's actually people that are disengaged as an employee, if that makes sense. It's often the ones that are unhappy, are leaving, aren't engaged with their job, aren't enjoying their job. That's probably the only common trend I can see. So that's why we still back things up with a poster if it's major. We also use the Dayforce messaging if we absolutely have to, because we know they've all got Dayforce, otherwise they can't get paid. So sometimes we will use, it's really rubbish, but we will use the Dayforce messaging app if it's probably maybe 6 times a year when it's something huge, just to make sure we don't miss them. But I wish there was, oh, they're all this, but they haven't been. That's probably the only thing I would say is I think that the only commonality is that they are a disengaged audience anyhow.
Thank you.
Oh, well done.
That's easy.
Although it's not fair, you made Kieran run around earlier. You should have to do the same.
Can you talk a little bit about the influencing stakeholders in the beginning of the process?
That's a really good question.
Because I think if I just, when I start mentioning the word change,
Or investment.
yeah, they panic. So.
So I was quite lucky in that, well, I say lucky, I joined in the midst of COVID and they were investing in my role. My role didn't exist. So they already had a little bit of that mentality. And this is going to sound daft, but where every other business struggled in COVID, Motorway Services actually did really well because we were the only ones open. So they were like, we need to invest. So they already had a little bit of that mentality. And then they could also see some things were failing. So I picked on what wasn't working and fed it back to that is the first thing. You know, for example, you get allergen alerts when you work in hospitality and catering. People weren't acting on the allergen alerts. They weren't removing those products from the things. That's a comms issue. If I could route some of those things back to that comms issue, it became easier to pitch the solution. And then I went in and instead of saying the investment as a whole of what I needed, I broke it down per colleague. I said, so actually it's only going to cost us this much per colleague per year. Went through the whole process with them. But I will admit what I did before I went to the operations board to ask for the investment. I got 2 of them behind it before I went in that room. I got our chief customer officer who deals with a lot of the brand stuff, the allergen stuff. I got him behind it and I got our people director behind it before I even went in that room. By talking to them and just saying, tell me your biggest problems, I think this can solve it. Yeah, basically, before I went in that room. So actually, when I went in that room, it was actually really easy. The conversations before I went in the room were harder. Hope that helps.
Anyone else?
I've got to throw some chocolate down here, though, because that was a really good question. You ready? I've got 2 more left, okay?
Anyone at this stage? No. I think that's
Okay, we'll carry on for now then. So I've drawn you a picture of how we got to here, and that's how we won our awards, everything we did till then. 18 months in, where are we now? You know, we've still got that incredible adoption rate, but I'll be really honest with you, we're a victim of our own success. The adoption and the buy-in to it's been so big, we're creating a bit too much noise. It can be confusing for our frontline colleagues. Where's the information I really need? There's a lot going on. Where do I start? I'm getting too many notifications. So we're now having to really think about some of the smaller elements of our communication to make sure that, number 1, our key messages get through. But number 2, they're also linking back to like our vision and our values and our purpose and really making sure we've got that like underlying narrative. So I thought it would be useful for me to be really honest with you about some of the stuff we've been working on. So I hope this will be useful. So the first thing I did is I went back to the basics of communications, and this is really fresh. Like I presented this to the board 3 weeks ago and got it signed off. I've gone back to a simple matrix. What tools have we got and when should you be using them? So this is now something I can talk to each of our heads of department, heads of function, heads of brand about. If you imagine we've got somebody internally that looks after our Burger King brand, they're chucking stuff out left, right and centre. I need them all aligned. So my now job in the next 2 months is getting around all of them and going, this is what you're going to do. What's Loop for? When do we use email? When do we use Teams? When do we use physical? When do we use Dayforce? Just even that last one going, Dayforce is purely for urgent messages to that whole business. Just trying to pull them back. Now, I have a really open question here. Anybody else's teams on sites, those, especially those who aren't in an office, still use WhatsApp loads, even though it's not GDPR compliant? Anyone going to be honest? Yeah? Oh, good. I've got to give somebody to a gentleman because I've gone with the ladies so far. Oh, sorry. Thank you for being honest. It's not GDPR compliant. So many of our sites are still using WhatsApp. Julia doesn't know this yet. Next year's problem is get them all off WhatsApp and all onto chat, using the chat function on Loop. It's going to be a big one next year to do that. But what I wanted to do is just reinforce what those channels are for and why they're there. We're still finding, which I'm sure you guys have all seen, our Burger King team is sending an email to all of our site colleagues that are sending it to a personal email address at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Stop doing it. So what I've got to do is pull them back to, I can't keep telling you not to do it. All I can do is go, actually, this is the structure you've got, this is why. And again, getting back to getting their leaders behind it. Once I've got the board behind it, which I got sign off on 3 weeks ago, it's much easier for me to say, your director has agreed with me on this. So putting some structure in, making the comms strategy really clear. We also, I'm going to talk a little bit about knowledge base, because this has made such a difference. Knowledge base we created within the system, and that just shows people how to use it. So we also found, for example, people weren't managing their notifications. They were getting frustrated that they were getting too many. I know Fresca mentioned it earlier. They turned them off at the weekend. They didn't realise they could do that. So what we've put is knowledge base in to say, how do you send an e-card? How do I turn my notifications off? And that, in the last few months of 2023, had 4,000 visits alone. So we know they're using it. They're just little videos we made ourselves. We just screen recorded them. Like, we don't have big budgets. We just screen recorded ourselves on the phone doing different things to show them how to use it. So again, real secret to success, show them how to use it. But we also created guides for our editors. So we had a little bit of fun with it. We've done everything around kind of launching and launch, rocket fuel. For example, our site operations managers, they look after their site feed on Loop. Our brand teams look after the brand feed. Our finance director looks after the finance feed. We gave them tools and little guides to help them know what is good content. Here's some few tips. Here's how you can use a different widget to make it show up on the feed better. So little guides for them. And then what we do is we do regular drop-ins. Similar to Fresco, we have drop-ins where they can come in and get that refresher. The one thing I would say with this is be aware of mopping up your new starters. That's something we've learned in the last 6 months, is we'd have a new site operations manager start, a new head of risk start, and they'd gone through the whole induction process, but nobody had told us we had those new starters. They suddenly have got a new head of department that doesn't know how to use Loop. So we've had to make sure we're now on the list to receive the new starter alerts so that we can go, right, 3 of you, let's show you how to use Loop. I don't have to do that for every colleague on the front line. It's more the people that might be an editor or have an influence over the content that's going out there. So that's something we've learned through almost making the mistake. I said I'd be honest. Competitions. Have some fun with the competitions, but be clever with them. So most of our competitions, you have to solve a puzzle that you've got to look across Loop pages for to get the answer. So you're driving them around Loop to get familiar with it, which has really helped. So they've got to find a letter on each page and spell a word. We do a lot of competitions, and that works really, really well as well as a big social feed to announce the winner. You can really have some fun with it. So we do a lot with that. The other thing that's quite useful, just something I thought of as we were talking about that, is something I noticed a few weeks back was that we were talking about Loop in some areas. So we put it into induction. We put it into onboarding, we put it into that colleague life cycle, but we didn't bring it to life in onboarding and we didn't bring it to life in induction. So I actually asked to rewrite our induction. Why did I do that? That was a massive task. But what I've done is I've changed our leadership induction that there's no slides now. They've just got a guide in front of them to run it and they have to use Loop to show them around it. So if it's to tell them about our benefits, they have to do it live on Loop. Again, just bringing it into that process so that it's always at the heart of what you do. We also recognised our fans. We've done this manually, and now Staffbase liked it so much, I've seen they want to go and take it and do it more. We find people that we think are awesome, and we give them a little top fan badge. It's just their profile photo. It's just giving them a chance. But look at the other side to this is we also made them update their profile photos, which is a real challenge, getting them to actually do that. So we've got our little top fans, and this is just some of the notes we got when people got those awards. So it shows you, like, honestly, about every 3 months we do another round of top fans. We get people ringing us, a bit like you do with the competition, Shelley. We get them ringing us going, am I going to be a top fan? So it didn't cost us anything. And what we're launching, in fact, I think today, is Loop Superstars. So every quarter we'll have a champion of the quarter, a site of the quarter, and a department of the quarter for doing the best content with the best engagement. They've just got some little medals. It costs us 30 quid to buy some medals. Like, it doesn't have to be huge. They love this stuff. We also have a very approachable CEO. I'm very lucky that we have a very, very people-orientated, approachable CEO. So we started our podcast, Coffee with Ken. Now, again, Jonathan on my team does this. He downloaded a podcast thing. It doesn't cost us a penny. Sometimes we do it in person, sometimes on Teams. It's very down to earth. What we're actually doing as comms professionals is slotting some of our brand promotions and some of our purpose and sustainability statements in, but people don't know that because he does it in a really fun way by the questions that we ask him. We'll say something like, you're at the services with your daughter. What are you stopping to get in Costa? He's already primed of what he's got to push. So we just kind of like have a bit of fun with it, but people can also ask questions. They can send questions in that we'll ask on that podcast. And it works because we know our colleagues listen to this on the way to work. So again, that might work where you're talking about your frontliners not being in an office. We know that audio only works when they're on their way into work or on their lunch break. And we get like really good engagement with that, really good. And also, it doesn't just come from the top. I don't know if you remember back at the beginning, I mentioned that Monica, our old one, was very top down. I would say this is more bottom up. They get so involved. I mean, look at some of the fantastic posts we get. The stuff that they do is brilliant. We get some amazing stuff on there. Some of the TikTok style videos, and I'm 43, I don't always get all this stuff. And there's some of them have done these TikToks. So we're launching a lot of electric vehicle charging. Some of the teams on one of the sites all got around the electric vehicle chargers that had just been installed and did this TikTok dance. It was brilliant, then picked up like the chargers at the end. I never would have thought to do that. So it's just embracing the ideas that we're seeing come from some of the different sites. So like I said, much more bottom up than top down. But now, I'll tell you the challenge I now face is our board, our ops board, are so busy, they're forgetting to like and comment on the posts. How do you tackle that one? It's a bit awkward. I went to go into a board meeting to do it, and I got a couple of minutes into a presentation about something else and went, this is not going to land well. So I've now just taken 15 minutes with each board member and gone, what can we do to make you more visible? What's going to help you? Because if you comment on something like something that one of the site colleagues has put on here, it means so much to them. So our CEO said, Monday morning, Emma, send me a text. Tell me what to comment on. Tell me that we've done, for example, a hidden disability sunflower campaign. Right, I'll look out for them and I'll tag it. Just have those conversations with them. I sat with our CFO and she asked me to put 15 minutes in her diary via her PA every week as a reminder to do it. It didn't have to be as big as I thought. And already they're getting the comments and it works. People are like, oh, the CFO liked my work, my thing, my video. So just, this is what I mean by 18 months in, you start to uncover kind of those challenges. I'd also say ask for feedback all the time. Not just feedback on how you are as an employer, but feedback on the platform itself. So people can send us ideas, they can feed back to us at any point. So just having that kind of open communication. We have a specific Loop inbox that people can ask us questions. And it's actually, I've got a good question to ask the Staffbase team, which somebody just came up with as well, that they come up with some great ideas that when you're in the weeds as a comms team, sometimes you don't see. So look, where are we now? It was 95%. It keeps teetering on 96 and going off again. Look how many posts we've got. We've got nearly 1 million visits, 65,000 likes, 13,500 comments. That's where we are now. It's working. It's constantly working. Woohoo! I feel like I need a little dance. What we've now got to establish is, how do we make sure that the right information is getting to the right person at the right time? We know we're getting the engagement, but for example, if I take our team leaders, which are like our supervisors, what are our team leaders really engaging with? On what day do they log in the most? Like, how do we know what they really like? That's now my next phase, and it's what we're working with the Staffbase team on. Really understand the behaviours of our different audience groups, because so far we can see the global what's working. Now we've really got to focus in on, okay, why aren't our team leaders taking this information in when they need to? We need to dig in. The other way we're going to do that is we're going to do some polls, some live polls, to say to them, you know, when do you log in? What's going on? Let's understand your behaviours a little bit. That's the next stage for us, really get under the skin of their behaviours and how they're using Loop. I just wanted to touch on a couple of other things that I think are important to show the knock-on impact of getting your intranet, your app right. We run something every year called our Have Your Say colleague survey. So I also run that on the other part of my job. Anybody else here involved with their survey for their employees? Yeah? Okay, fab. So 93% response rate to an employee survey when you're in retail and hospitality. I think that's pretty good, yeah? It was 95% at Merlin, so I'm like, 2 to go. Most of that for me is down to the fact that you've got the right comms platforms to get that message to them. So the knock-on impact is they're also able to give better feedback, you're getting more authentic feedback. The Let's Talk results, so that's our CFO. She does a 1-minute video every month, and I keep her to a minute, and she tells us the financial results, but in a really jargon-free way that even I understand it. Again, we get loads of visits to that one every month, just a little update on what's going on with the business. Coffee with Ken's had over 7,000 visits. We've also won some fab awards. Look, they're up there, Patrick. But we don't do the awards for like glory and all that. We do it to show our colleagues, because I don't think our 6,000 colleagues actually realise how good Loop is compared to other businesses. So we do it really to reinforce the message to them that we've really invested in something good for them that's making an impact. Almost 3,000 competition entries. Again, we see the opposite there of the question you asked us. The ones that enter the competitions are the ones that are also often the happy colleagues that are sharing the great stories as well. So before I just show you that last one, which is about the future, I'll just stop and take, if we've got any questions that, before I talk about the future, we've kind of done the past, the present. If we've got any questions around kind of where we're at the moment. Oh, look, one straight up. Oh, hang on though, you've got to have the last chocolate for that because your hand was straight in there. Ready? Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm in the process of implementing Staffbase, and it just feels like there's so much to do. You've done an amazing job. Notifications, how do you manage that? How do you stop people being overwhelmed? What's your little video that says how to manage your notifications?
So it is two-way. We have to manage the editors first. So we're very restrictive about who has an editor's right to be able to even send a notification. And back at the beginning, we were even more restrictive than we are now. We've gradually kind of released that out. So we've now got probably about 25 editors who could actually send a notification. We started with about 5. So number one, we have to keep an eye on them and constantly educate them. There's a lot of crime wolf. And we're kind of like, the more you keep sending these, the one that really matters in those 10 is the one you're going to lose. So there's a lot of, rather than telling them, we try and, I say, coach them. We take a bit of a coaching approach. Okay, so what is it you're trying to achieve? Okay, could we streamline this? So we coach the editors. We definitely have to spend, I would say 30% of our jobs as internal comms is coaching those editors. I won't lie. We've just last week launched an Editor's Corner, which is a community specifically for them to try and get them to answer each other's questions instead of coming to us. But the other one is, it's just that education around, you can set your notifications. I don't know if you know this, but you can also, like, I can't remember how you do it, but they can almost create like a favourites list. Like, what do you call it, Julia? You might know better than me. Where they can say, I want to track that for later and come back to it. Bookmark it, that's it. Then what they can create is a little bookmark of 3 or 4 things that they might have needed to action. It's just trying to help them understand that 1, control the editors, 2, then they can take control themselves. But it's still an issue. It's not quite that easy, but we monitor them. So the analytics now, we look at not just how many notifications have been sent, but we try and put ourselves in the shoes of the recipient. So I will go, I'm a site operations manager. How many notifications do I get in a month? Yeah. Okay, where are they coming from? So as a comms team there, I thought it'd be less work having a really good platform. It's not, it's more, but it's worth it. The back over there. Come on, guys, let's make Patrick run.
Hello, hi. I work for Cadbury, so thanks for throwing our products out.
Perfect. Well, we have a deal with Cadbury's. We do a lot with Cadbury's. It's fine.
So my question is, in relation to your survey, obviously you got your response rate up there.
Yep.
Have you managed to make a connection between launching this platform and overall engagement results, like from your survey?
I love that you asked me that, and I should have put that in the slide deck, but I've got no Cadbury's left to give you, but you don't need any.
No.
Yes. So we use, to measure colleague happiness, we use a platform called Workle, work with an L on the end. They're linked to the Sunday Times. In fact, we just got Sunday Times top 10 employers. Very exciting in our business. There's a lot on Loop about it right now. So yes, they measure 6 happiness factors that make up your EEI, your engagement score. Luckily for us, one of those is information sharing. So I wish I'd put it on there, but the information sharing score itself has gone up significantly. since we put Loop in place, but so has colleague happiness. Yes, you can see it. We also then monitor that back to the comments to see what percentage of the comments in the colleague happiness survey mention Loop. So as best we can, I think you're never going to fully cross-correlate it, but putting on my colleague engagement hat, we cross-correlate colleague engagement to site customer NPS and site EBITDA, so that you can try and cross-correlate them all in, does that make sense, in a slightly different way?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, Alex. Oh, you're
Alex is
challenging me.
Staffbase. Uh-oh.
There you go. Cheers, Alex.
No, it was just a trend from Chris Maloney at Rolls-Royce in the session before this.
The one that I thought I was in and I wasn't. I was in the wrong one.
That's
I sat there
right.
for an hour, yeah.
He mentioned the impact, just like you did, about senior leaders being visible on their platform. But he also, I spoke to him afterwards, and he said, it has such a huge impact.
It does.
And I suppose it just lends the question, like, how do you illustrate that impact to your senior leaders to make them do more, aside from just booking time, and like, how do you convince them?
Yeah. I think we're quite lucky in that our board are quite down to earth and kind of want that exposure. You wouldn't believe this, of our entire operations board, the one I struggle with the most, tech director. You wouldn't believe, would you? To try and get him visible, he'll just go, oh, my team will post. He can't see that bigger picture. So I suppose for me, what I do is I start with the ones who are engaged and I make an example of them, if I'm honest. Like the fact that Ken is so up for it, our CEO. And because of that, he gets people stopping him on the sites and giving him feedback. He gets people really do engage with him. So I then use him as a little bit of a gateway to the rest of it, and try and explain to them that I also focus very much on if you're on there, then your team's messages are getting across. So for example, my tech director will then say to me, actually some of our technology messages aren't getting through. We're doing this technology check and people aren't reading it. I can kind of then bring that back to, we'll look at the visibility of the other leaders. Why would they look at your team's comms if you're not communicating? So again, a bit like the question earlier, I'll route it back to what their goals are.
Anyone else?
Okay, so I'll talk about the future a little bit. So this is so fresh. I only presented this to the board 3 weeks ago as well. Like, where are we headed next? It's a very summary, but I wanted to give you a picture. So this year for us, as I mentioned, it's all about Loop engagement with the actual content, the content itself. I'll send it to you, Julia, don't worry. Developing that Loop champion on each site. As I said, we did that trial. Something my director has taught me really well is don't try to boil the ocean, which I tend to do. I want everything perfect. So we've got used to piloting it, check it works, then run with it. And I would still say now of our 52 sites, I think we've got 4 that the champion's a bit rubbish. We need to really get that working. Connecting colleagues with positive journeys, that's our sustainability. Anybody else got this on their list this year? As an internal comms head, you're now in charge of making sure everybody knows about our sustainability approach. So how can I use Loop to create that? So this one's an interesting one for me because I think with sustainability comms, I'm looking at the Biffa guys because I think you guys have done a great job on this, is some people just want the little bit of information that's put in front of them. So that's that drip feed of our milestones and our progress. But some people want more information. So we're then going to create that hub where they can come back to get that more information. I stole that from Biffa. So how can we upskill our site operations managers? I think I mentioned earlier, making sure those managers on sites are really getting it. Connecting our department managers with brand updates. So rather than me saying every department manager needs to connect with everything, I know specifically what their priority needs to be and how can we make sure that connection is happening. And we want to also do a bit more gamification, more competitions. How can we have a bit more fun with some of that kind of gamification side? 2025, I mentioned, moving the WhatsApp groups over. We then, something we've learned is our site teams are so busy that me creating yet another thing they have to attend or come to is just creating too much. So instead, as you'll see there on the point number 2 on that one and point number 1 on this, is I'm going to integrate Loop into their existing training modules. We've already done it with the DMs, we're a year ahead. Our department managers, we've already integrated a video about Loop and like a bit of a quiz about Loop into their welcome day training. So I'm integrating it to what they're already doing. We want to integrate Loop with some other tools. A bit like we talked about earlier, can we integrate it with Dayforce? What other single sign-on can we do? Explore AI. I'm so excited about the fact that it's going to create like a little chat thing where people can ask questions. So I don't know about you guys, but our biggest challenge this year so far is we had to do something around pay reviews. Oh, the questions and the negativity that you get on the platform. So we decided to turn off the questions and comments and just put a form instead because it started to get a bit daft. What I love the idea is that we can use AI to create the chat thing where people can ask a question. And our benefits team will have already fed all the information in so it can answer it for them instead of them getting 400 emails. But also that the AI will enable our editors to make their content a bit better as well and make it a bit more Moto language. So there's some really good stuff I'm excited about with that. Do I get like a commission, by the way, guys? No? Chocolate. And then I want to just, if any of you guys look at employee engagement side of things, I think we're still slightly missing something around connection, building that connection to our brand and our purpose. So I actually, whenever I'm on a site, I ask our colleagues, if you're down the pub and someone says, who do you work for? What do you say? Now, I was convinced they'd say like Costa, Burger King, KFC, like the big brands. I knew they probably wouldn't say Moto. But they actually said Weatherby Services, Winchester Services. It took me by surprise, which is why we created the hashtags Team Weatherby, Team Winchester, Team Heston, and that's gone really well because we monitor the hashtag use and they're really popular. I think we need to do a bit more using the chat function and communities to kind of foster those conversations. And the other thing we're not doing right now is harnessing innovation. So we haven't got any way of our colleagues effectively giving us their ideas for the business. So I don't want to launch that this year on every topic under the sun because building the infrastructure to ensure we respond to those is challenging. So we're going to launch it this year just for sustainability. So we're going to launch Spark through the Loop platform where people can submit their ideas, but because it's one topic, it's a bit easier to manage the response to that. I'll just touch on 2026 briefly because I'll admit when I presented this to the board, internal comms moves quite quickly. I kind of made up 2026 and thought, nah, we'll figure that out when we get to it a little bit. But it's all about then engaging with our team leaders who are our supervisors. Engaging that approach because I know that we're hoping Staffbase is going to have some ideas around radio and live streaming, so I kind of fed that in. A bit around virtual reality, for example, when we're opening a new site so that teams can see it before we actually open it. And also just doing a bit more with the analytics. So we do a certain amount now, but I think there's probably over time even more we can do to get under the skin of how people are interacting with different types of content, be it video, be it news, updates from different teams. So for me, that's a little bit about where we're headed. So I know I've covered a lot, and you won't believe this, but I talk even faster than I am today. I'm trying to slow it down because I get enthusiastic. You said you wanted energy after lunch, yeah? So if I open up, are there any questions in the app, or have we kind of done them as we've gone along?
No, there are. But at the same time, we're closing up in a couple of minutes. So what we can do, I think we all want to know what round you got in the weakest link for the start.
Not very well. About halfway through, and they asked me a mental arithmetic question, and you literally see me go. I remember what it was. What's quarter of 44?
11.
Yeah, I can tell you that now. They put the camera on you, and Anne Robinson is mean. They put the camera on you, and they stared at you, and you see me go, 11.5. I got voted off. Yeah, it's fair. I've also been on, what's the other one? The Chase. If you're as old as me, Beadle's About, Cilla Black's Moment of Truth. Yeah, I get around.
Have you ever won anything?
I've probably over the years won about 40 grand worth of prizes and stuff. So I've done okay. Since I had my little boy 5 years ago, I don't do it as much because I can't get in and out of London because I live in Dorset. But yeah, you can probably imagine me being quite comfortable doing that. I'm comfortable public speaking, but you put a camera on me, for some reason my top lip gets really dry. So whenever you see me on TV, I'm like this.
Right. There are questions in the app. However, we're going to finish the session a few minutes early. The reason for it is there are still so many people here, so we're going to remove these partitions. Otherwise, it will be jam-packed in the middle room. So
what I would say is I've got to head off after this to go back to Dorset for my little one. But find me on LinkedIn. I'm really welcome questions, and I'm also always up for a half-hour Teams with a coffee, and I can show you Luke properly if anybody's really kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of it.
Thanks, Emma. So remember to rate the session and 5 stars, of course. And yeah, thanks, Emma. And yeah,
thanks everybody for joining today. Thank you.